Today, I think I have found a $200 solution to a several $1,000 problem. If any of you guys have a C5 Corvette, you know that the drivetrain shake or wheel hop or whatever you want to call it is absolutely absurd, especially in the manual cars. I had two of these in automatic, and this is my only manual C5 that I've had. And the drivetrain shake in this car, regardless of what tire I have on it, because I know that's also a factor, regardless of what pressure I run in the tires, it's still extremely irritating. I did a lot of research, and there's a lot of $1,000 to $2,000 solutions to this problem. And I came across HPI, which is high performance injectors. They made this diff brace for these cars. It retails around 200 bucks. And I reached out to Chris. I pretty much told him, like, hey, I have a YouTube channel, I have a C5, I've been dealing with this issue. He took care of me, and we are currently heading to install this. I know two people, personally, that have broken input shafts due to wheel hop in these cars.
Not again?
Not to mention, it's really annoying to drive a car with wheel hop, and sometimes you have to back off. So this is what I received here. Comes in this little box. Ignore the window scraper. I bought two knives last weekend, and don't have either of them on me, somehow. Let's see what we got. A very well packaged diff brace. We got the piece that's going to mount to the cradle, and some new hardware with some washers, as well as the bolt that goes to the center mount. Very nice. It's painted. Bolts are welded. It's going to sit in there kind of like this. You're not really going to be able to fit a wrench there. So this is going to get bolted down into the cradle where the factory one goes. And you have the bump stops, of course, and it says HPI on both sides. This is what we're going to be removing. So I'm going to take out these two, look like 18s here. I'm going to take those out, and I'm going to put this jack here under, right about here. We're going to jack it up to get the other two bolts out. Then we should be able to take the balancer and everything else off, even though this exhaust is a little bigger than stock. I think there's a couple like 12 or 14 millimeter bolts holding in the top and the bottom up there, as well as down there. So we should be able to get through, hopefully with an extension, and I'll let you guys know how that goes. Those were both 18s. I'm going to set them up on my training jack so that I totally lose them for later. And then I'm going to jack this up about this much so that I can get a socket and a ratchet in there to break these free, because the bottom of your cradle here is solid. Next up, you've got your 15 millimeter bolts here on the left side, as well as on the right side. They were not too tight. I was able to take them out with a 3/8 ratchet. That counterweight was in there like this. It had two 13 millimeter head bolts facing in. The top one, you will need quite a long extension. I'd say this is probably pretty close to a foot with a 13 millimeter socket. I used a wobble socket because the axle was a little tough to get around. And then the other one, I used just a 13 millimeter wrench. For that bottom bolt, you're going to want a relatively long, I'd say that this is probably 7 or 8 inch wrench. 13 millimeter as well. It's going to be up here, the side of your diff housing. And you're going to want a relatively long wrench, because if you don't, it'll get lost up here and you'll have no leverage. This is what we started with, and this is what we're replacing it with. You can see that there's a lot more material on this one, as well as the bushings are going to be a lot stiffer. This car's 25 years old now. So just for and giggles, I put this in the vise, and I can move the top portion of this with my hands. I can move this because of the bushing, which it does give it a great ride, like on the highway and everything. It absorbs those little vibrations. But when you want to do a hard takeoff, it kind of just ruins your day. So we'll figure out the best way to get this in there now, and we'll be all set. Just a little mock up here. I'm going to actually set this piece in there first. I feel like I'll be able to slide this in from the side, and it should sit right about like that before I drop the rear diff. I'm going to put the bolts up and through. I'll lightly torque those, and then I'll drop the rear diff down, which should put us right about here. I'll slide that bolt through, I'll torque this up, torque this up, torque this up, and then we should be good to lower everything down and drive the car. I've loosely fitted the new diff brace. I have also put this bolt in. Now, the process I did and what I recommend you guys do so that you don't have any troubles, I would put these bolts in the middle of installing this. So first, I slid this down through its allotted holes here. I then took the brace itself, pushed it in from the left, pushed these lines out of the way, pushed this brake line up a little bit, rotated it forwards all the way because there's little slots right here. So I rotated this as far forwards as I could, like this. Put these two bolts in, held them up with my fingers because these bolts are too long to go in just from the bottom because you don't have enough clearance, as you can see. And my diff is jacked right up against my tunnel. Then you're going to want to put this, lift it up with your two fingers like this. I pushed it up, slid this bolt through, put the nut on the back side. Now I'm going to torque these two down, drop the diff, torque this, and torque these. I now have these two 16 millimeters torqued. Now I'm going to drop it down, do the main bolt, and two 18 millimeters that we took off before as well. Both the front and the back are both 21 millimeters for this main bolt. Now, the way that I'm going to do this here is I'm going to use the box end, and I'm going to put it on and rotate it. That way I can get it off once it draws this nut down. So I'm going to slide it off to the side like that. You're going to want to use one with a little angle like this, like most are. Reason for that is if you have something that's flat and it's just going to be right up against your cradle here, and you don't want that because you're not going to be able to tighten the nut or your wrench is going to get stuck on, and that's no fun. And we are all tightened down. Every bolt's good to go. Just got some tools to put away, and we'll take a ride in the car and see what we think. Not sure if I mentioned before, I do have new tires for the car as well. It just so happens that when I installed the diff brace on this car, I had bad tires on the car. But we're still going to go for a test drive and see what I think because I know exactly how this wheel hopped before, and I wasn't going to do it for a video and break the car. But it was a very terrible experience, and hopefully that changes right now. So first drive out in the car, I turned the traction control off, and in a spot that it normally wheel hops, I just matted it from doing like 10 miles an hour, and it normally would wheel hop there and wheel hop again as I shifted second. It just spun through first, chirped second, kept going. Of course, the tires aren't great. Other thing to note, I have seen people complain about the drivetrain vibration. Now, I'm very sensitive to drivetrain vibration. I cannot stand vibrations or squeaks or terrible noises. This barely made it worse. There really wasn't any drivetrain vibration in the car before other than the drivetrain shake, wheel hop, whatever. Now the rear end feels like it's connected to the car solidly. Before it felt like it was connected to the car with rubber bands. That just wasn't a great feeling. At a regular drive right now, I do have 390s in the car. So I'm about 50 right now at about 1700 RPMs. So here we are. I hope you guys will be able to hear it. Otherwise, the drivetrain noise really isn't bad. You can hear a little vibration. So I'm gonna set you guys on the seat now, roll the windows down, and show you what it sounds like under full load. Pretty much from a very uneven, not so great blacktop surface, where it normally used to wheel hop. I'm going to start off, I'm currently doing 8 miles an hour. I'll get up to 10 and just plant my foot where it normally used to wheel hop. It hopped a little bit in second, but that's to be expected. It used to hop so bad right there that I had to back out of it. That was just a little first through third. That was like a 10 to 90. This is in Mexico, of course. This is filmed on a private course. There is no other drivers here on the road. Nobody else to worry about. But I am extremely impressed. The drivetrain noise really isn't much worse. The only thing that you guys are probably going to hear in this video right now is going to be the wind noise. With the windows up, it's a little noticeable. With no radio and no climate control on. So after some driving, kicking the clutch at low speeds, driving throughout a different RPM ranges, through different gears and everything, there is a noticeable difference in drivetrain harmonics from like 2,000 to 3,000 RPM. Also, if you're at 16 to 1700 RPMs, which I know is a very small increment. There is a slight vibration between 16 and 1700 RPMs. There also is a noticeably larger amount of vibration on deceleration below about 3200 RPMs. It gets back to normal around 1500 RPMs. So those are things to take into consideration because it's really not in your full-time RPM range. If I am cruising, for instance, right now, I'm below 2000 RPMs. So I really don't have to worry about that, other than that 16 to 1700 RPM increment. Normally, if I am engine braking, it will be in like the 2500 to 4000 RPM range. I just have to relearn how to drive the car so that I'm no longer engine braking in that bracket of vibration. Lastly, the performance of this for $200 really is incredible. Now, I don't have any long-term say over how this could or couldn't damage your car or anything like that. Of course, what you do to your car is on you entirely, and I take no responsibility for you modifying your vehicle. Being completely straightforward, you do notice the difference in vibration. If you have the radio on or you have the climate controls on, you're not going to notice the difference sound-wise. You'll just feel it, especially in the floorboard. That's really where I notice it. The seat seems to dampen a little bit of it. As you'd expect, I don't notice any of it in the steering wheel or in the pedals, so I'm not too worried about it. Now, I could be overreacting as well. It's probably not as bad as I make it seem. I'm just really sensitive to vibrations and harmonics. So I think that this is well worth the $200. I would totally go directly through HPI. Their customer service is top-notch. I gave a call in after business closed. When I called in, I didn't know they were closed. Called in like 6:30 on a Friday, and Chris answered, helped me out. That customer service is phenomenal. Now, I recommend calling in their business hours, of course. I'm much more confident now in not having to worry about the drivetrain shake or wheel hop. I think that for a couple $100, you really can't do much better in these cars. And I think that this kind of ties the rear end into the car a little bit better. And even though the vibrations are definitely worse in the car, it's definitely noticeable, I still think for $200, the savings that you're gonna have from not twisting your input shaft or not ripping your rear end out from underneath your car due to wheel hop is well worth it. It's not to say it can't still wheel hop, because it's definitely possible if you're running, 10-year-old run flat tires from the last 80-year-old guy that owned your car. It's probable that it's still going to wheel hop regardless. Now, that being said, I have some new tires that I'm going to go through on the car. I'm going to go enjoy it. If you have any questions, drop them below. Thank you for watching, and thanks again to Chris down at HPI. It was a really good experience dealing with them.